Pick up your trash and get out." His fiancée yelled at the maid. Then the billionaire showed up. This story might change how you see people forever. A maid was on her knees, picking up broken picture frames from the grass, while the woman in the blue dress screamed at her to get out. She didn't fight back. She didn't say a word. She just kept cleaning up the mess like she'd done it 1,000 times before. But what nobody on that lawn knew, not the fiancé, not the guests watching from the windows, was that the man walking up the driveway in that navy suit was about to find out exactly who this maid really was to him. And when he did, nothing in that mansion would ever be the same again. Hey friends, welcome back. Before we begin, tell me, where are you watching from today? Which country do you call home? Drop it in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Today I'm bringing you one of the most emotional, most talked about stories I've ever told on this channel. It's a story about pride, about people who think money makes them better than everyone else, and about a woman who had every reason to walk away, but chose grace instead. Stay with me till the end, because what happens in this story will stay with you long after the video ends. Nobody on that lawn knew her real name. The Whitmore estate sat behind iron gates on the edge of Charleston, South Carolina, the kind of house that made people slow their cars down just to stare. White columns, fountains shaped like a swan, rose bushes trimmed so perfectly they looked fake. Her name was Adeline Brooks, 29 years old. She'd worked at the Whitmore estate for almost 2 years, ever since she'd moved to Charleston with nothing but a suitcase and a heart full of grief she hadn't finished carrying. She kept her head down, did her job well, and never once complained. Not when she was asked to work 16-hour days before a gala. Not when she was talked to like she was invisible. That morning the house was in chaos. In 6 hours, the Whitmore family would host the engagement party of the century. 300 guests, string quartet, ice sculptures, the whole affair, celebrating the upcoming marriage of Julian Whitmore, 33 years old, heir to Whitmore Shipping Industries, and his fiancée, Camille Reyes, 31, a woman who had spent the last 4 months redecorating a house she didn't even own yet. Adeline had been given one job that morning: clear out the old storage room off the west wing and prepare it for the wedding planner supplies. Boxes of old photographs, old letters, an old sewing kit. Things that had clearly belonged to someone from a long time ago. She was told to move it all to the garage, no questions asked. She didn't ask questions. She never did. But as she lifted one of the boxes, the bottom gave way, and a stack of photographs spilled onto the marble floor. She knelt down to gather them and stopped. They were pictures of a little boy. Maybe 6 or 7 years old, missing his front teeth, laughing on a swing set. In some photos, a woman held him, young, tired-looking, but smiling like he was the only good thing in her world. Adeline's hands started to shake. She recognized that swing set. She recognized that yard. She recognized her own mother's handwriting on the back of one photo. Julian, age 6, summer at the lake house. Her heart pounded so loud she almost didn't hear Camille's heels clicking down the hallway behind her. "What is taking you so long?" Camille's voice cut through the quiet like glass breaking. "I don't pay you to sit on the floor and look at old junk." Adeline quickly gathered the photos back into the box, tucking one, just one, into the pocket of her apron before Camille could see. "I'm sorry, ma'am. The box broke. I'll have it cleared in a few minutes." Camille wasn't listening. She was already scrolling on her phone, barely glancing down at the woman kneeling at her feet. "Just get it out of my sight before the guests arrive. This house needs to look perfect today." "Perfect?" Adeline almost laughed. If only Camille knew what she was standing on top of. She carried the box outside, her mind spinning, her chest tight with something she hadn't felt in years, the ache of a question she thought she'd buried for good. Because the boy in that photo, the little boy with the gap-toothed smile on the swing set behind her mother's old lake house, That boy had her mother's handwriting under his name. And Adeline had spent her whole childhood being told that her mother once worked as a nanny for a wealthy family. A family her mother never wanted to talk about. A family her mother left in a hurry, when Adeline was only a baby, and never explained why. Could it be? Was Julian Whitmore the boy her mother had raised before Adeline was even born? She didn't know yet. But her hands wouldn't stop shaking as she stepped out onto that perfect green lawn, carrying a box that held more truth than anyone at that party was ready for. She had no idea the box would fall, and neither did anyone watching. One wrong step, and everything spilled out onto the grass. The morning rushed forward the way important mornings always do, too fast for anyone to catch their breath. Trucks came and went. Florists argued about where the arch should stand. A string quartet rehearsed near the fountain, filling the yard with something that almost sounded like peace, if you didn't know what was boiling underneath it. Adeline kept working. She told herself it didn't matter, that it was probably a coincidence, that lots of little boys had gap-toothed smiles and swing sets, that her mother's handwriting could have belonged to any Julian in any lake house in America. She told herself this over and over, because it was easier than facing what her heart already suspected. But she couldn't stop thinking about her mother, Ruth Brooks, who died when Adeline was 19. Ruth had worked private domestic jobs her whole life, cooking, cleaning, caring for other people's children in other people's beautiful homes, coming back every night to their small apartments smelling like someone else's kitchen. She never talked about the families she worked for. Not their names, not their houses, nothing. Just, I did what I had to do, baby. That chapter's closed. Except now, standing in this yard with a photograph hidden in her apron pocket, Adeline wasn't so sure that chapter was ever really closed at all. At 2:47 in the afternoon, carrying the last box out to the garage, Adeline's shoe caught the edge of a paving stone. She stumbled forward. The box flew from her arms. It hit the ground and burst open right there on the front lawn. Porcelain teacups, silver picture frames, an old lace handkerchief, and photographs, dozens of them, scattering across the grass in front of everyone. Guests were already arriving. Cars were pulling into the circular driveway. And there was Adeline on her hands and knees, scrambling to gather broken glass and old memories in front of Charleston's wealthiest families, all dressed in silk and diamonds, all watching. That's when Camille came storming out the front doors in her royal blue gown, face twisted in fury, mortified in front of her guests. "Are you kidding me right now?" she shouted, loud enough for the valets to turn their heads. "Pick up your trash and get out. I don't care whose fault it is. You are done here, do you understand me? Done." "Ma'am, please, I can explain." "I don't want an explanation. Get off my lawn before our guests think we hire people who can't even carry a box." Adeline felt her face burn hot with humiliation, but she didn't argue. She never argued. She got down on her knees in the grass, in her red uniform, gathering broken glass with her bare hands while guests in designer dresses stepped around her like she was furniture. She found the photograph of the little boy on the swing again, face down in the grass. She picked it up gently like it was something sacred, and that's when she noticed it. A black SUV pulling up the driveway, and a man stepping out in a navy suit, moving fast, his face pale with concern. Julian Whitmore. He wasn't supposed to be home for another hour. He froze the second he saw the scene in front of him. His fiancée screaming, a woman on her knees in the grass, and scattered everywhere around her. Photographs of his own childhood, spilling out across the lawn like a secret that refused to stay buried. "Camille," he said slowly. His eyes locked on the photo in Adeline's trembling hand. "Where did those come from?" Camille blinked, confused by the sudden shift in his voice. "I don't know, Julian, some old boxes from storage, why does it matter?" But Julian wasn't looking at Camille anymore. He was looking at Adeline, at her face, at the photograph she was holding, the one with the swing set, the lake house, the little boy with a missing front tooth. And for reasons he couldn't yet explain, his heart started pounding the exact same way hers had an hour earlier. "Who are you?" he asked quietly. "And how do you have my mother's handwriting on the back of that photo?" The whole yard went silent. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The question hung in the air like a held breath. Adeline rose slowly to her feet, the photograph still in her hand, grass stains on her knees, her heart hammering so hard she thought everyone could hear it. Guests near the entrance had gone quiet, sensing something was happening that had nothing to do with wedding flowers or seating charts. "That's not your mother's handwriting," Adeline said carefully. "That's mine. It says my mother's name, Ruth Brooks." Julian's face went white. He took a step closer, ignoring Camille completely now, ignoring the guests, ignoring everything except the woman standing in front of him in a maid's uniform holding a piece of his forgotten childhood. "Ruth," he repeated, almost like the name hurt to say. "Ruth Brooks raised me. From the time I was 2 until I was 7. She was more of a mother to me than my own mother ever was. My parents traveled constantly. Ruth was the one who packed my lunches, who taught me to ride a bike, who sat with me every night until I fell asleep." His voice cracked. "She disappeared one day. No warning. No goodbye. I used to think I did something wrong." Adeline felt tears sting her eyes. Decades of unanswered questions rushing to the surface all at once. "She didn't leave because of you," she said softly. "She left because she found out she was pregnant. Alone. No husband. She was afraid that if the family found out, she'd lose the job before she could save enough money to survive on her own. So she ran. She never told anyone where she went. She never told me who she used to work for. Then how do you? I found this box an hour ago. I recognized the swing set. I recognized her handwriting. I've been standing here for the last hour trying to convince myself it was a coincidence." Adeline's voice trembled. "My mother worked for you. You're the little boy in these photos." Julian stared at her and for the first time really looked at her. Not as the maid on his lawn, not as staff, but as a person standing in front of him holding a piece of the childhood he'd spent 30 years wondering about. "Ruth Brooks was the only person in this house who ever made me feel like I mattered," he said, his voice raw. "When she left, I cried for weeks. My father told me to stop being weak. My mother said the help always leaves eventually, and that I shouldn't get attached to people like that." He looked down at the photo in Adeline's hand, his jaw tight. "People like that. That's what she called the woman who raised me." Camille, standing off to the side in her blue gown, finally found her voice, though it came out smaller than before. "Julian, I didn't know any of this. I just wanted the storage room cleared for the wedding planner. I told her to move some old boxes, that's all." "You told her to get out," Julian said, turning to face his fiancée for the first time. His voice sharper than anyone had heard it before. "In front of 200 people. You screamed at a woman on her knees picking up glass with her bare hands, and you didn't even ask if she was hurt. I didn't know she was. I mean, how was I supposed to know she had some connection to your family?" "She's the maid, Julian." The word landed heavy in the silent yard. "The maid," said the exact same way his mother used to say people like that. Julian turned back to Adeline, and something in his expression had shifted completely, like a fog had lifted after 30 years. "What's your name?" "Adeline. Adeline Brooks." "Adeline." He said it slowly like he was trying to memorize it. "Ruth's daughter. The little girl she left to protect." He shook his head, his eyes wet. Do you know I spent my entire childhood trying to figure out what I did wrong to make her leave? I hired a private investigator when I was 26, trying to find her, just to say thank you. He never found anything. She'd changed her last name to keep from being traced back to us. Adeline's chest tightened. She never told me any of this. She died 4 years ago. Breast cancer. She worked 3 jobs most of my childhood, and she never once complained. She told me she did what she had to do, and that chapter was closed. Adeline's voice broke. I didn't even know your name until an hour ago. Julian closed his eyes for a moment, absorbing the weight of 30 years of silence finally breaking. When he opened them, he looked at Camille, then at the guests gathered near the entrance, watching everything unfold like a scene from a movie no one could look away from. She's not the maid, Julian said, loud enough for everyone near the driveway to hear. Her mother saved my childhood. And I just watched my own fiancée scream at her daughter like she was nothing. Camille's face went pale. And for the first time all day, she had absolutely nothing to say. What happened next, nobody at that party ever forgot. Julian did something that stunned every guest standing on that lawn. He walked past his fiancée, past the string quartet still playing softly by the fountain as if nothing had happened, and he knelt down in the grass, in his $3,000 suit, right next to Adeline, gathering the last of the broken glass and scattered photographs with his own hands. Julian, what are you doing? Camille's voice cracked with disbelief. Your suit, the guests are watching. Let them watch, Julian said without looking up. Maybe it's time they saw what really matters. Guests whispered among themselves. Someone lowered their champagne glass. A woman near the entrance actually gasped out loud when Julian, heir to one of the wealthiest shipping families in South Carolina, picked up a broken teacup and handed it gently to Adeline, saying, "This one was my mother's, actually. Ruth used to let me drink hot cocoa from it when I had bad dreams. I always wondered where it went." Adeline's hands trembled as she took it. "She kept it," she whispered. "She kept a lot of things from those years. I never understood why. She had almost nothing, but she kept this box like it was treasure." "Because it was," Julian said quietly. "It was proof that someone loved me before I understood what love even was." By now, the party planner had frozen mid-instruction. The photographer, hired to capture engagement photos, had quietly started snapping pictures of this instead. The real moment, the one no one had planned for. Camille stood alone near the entrance, watching her fiancé kneel in the grass beside a woman she just humiliated in front of everyone she wanted to impress. And slowly, painfully, she began to understand just how badly she'd misjudged this moment, and this man. "Julian, please," she said, walking toward him, her voice softer now, almost pleading. "I'm sorry. I didn't know. If I had known who she was." Julian stood up slowly, brushing grass off his knees, and looked at Camille with an expression that broke something in the air between them. "That's exactly the problem, Camille. It shouldn't matter who she is. You screamed at a human being on her knees, hurt and humiliated. And the only thing you were worried about was how it looked to our guests." He shook his head. "You didn't ask if she was okay. You didn't ask if she was hurt. You called her trash before you even asked her name." "I panicked," Camille said, tears welling in her eyes now, real ones. "It's our engagement party, everything felt like it was falling apart and I reacted. That's not who I really am, Julian." "Maybe," Julian said quietly. "Or maybe it's exactly who you are when you think no one important is watching." The words hung heavy over the lawn. Adeline, still holding the teacup with trembling hands, felt like she should say something, anything, to fill the terrible silence stretching across the yard. But before she could, Julian turned back to her, and his voice softened completely, like the weight of 30 years had finally found somewhere to land. "Adeline, I owe your mother more than I can ever repay. She gave me the only real childhood I ever had. And I let her disappear without ever saying thank you." His eyes filled with tears he didn't bother hiding. "Please let me make this right. Not because of guilt. Because you and your mother deserve so much more than what this family gave you." Adeline looked down at the photograph still clutched in her other hand. The little boy on the swing, laughing, safe, loved. She thought about her mother, working 3 jobs, never complaining, carrying a secret she took to her grave to protect a family that never even knew to look for her. "She would have liked knowing you turned out okay," Adeline said softly, her voice breaking. "That's all she ever wanted for you." Around them, the entire engagement party stood frozen in silence, watching a moment far more real, far more human, than anything the wedding planner could have staged. Somewhere near the fountain, someone began quietly crying. And Camille stood alone, watching the life she thought she was building crack open in front of 200 witnesses. Nobody on that lawn expected the party to end the way it did. But it was only the beginning of what came next. What Julian did in the weeks that followed changed more than just one life. The engagement party never really resumed that day. Guests quietly slipped away, whispering among themselves about what they'd witnessed, while Camille retreated inside the mansion, humiliated and shaken by a version of herself she didn't recognize. Julian didn't chase after her. Instead, he stayed outside with Adeline as the afternoon light softened, helping her gather what remained of the box. Photographs, the broken teacup, the old lace handkerchief that had once belonged to a woman neither of them had properly mourned together until now. "I want to hear everything," Julian said, sitting down on the porch steps beside her, still in his grass-stained suit, looking nothing like the polished air Charleston society expected. "Tell me about her. Tell me who Ruth Brooks became after she left this house." So Adeline did. She told him about the tiny apartment above a laundromat, about her mother working 2, sometimes 3 jobs, about the nights Ruth came home too tired to eat but never too tired to ask about Adeline's day. She told him about the sacrifices, the quiet dignity, the way her mother never once spoke badly about the family she'd once worked for. Not even when things got hard, not even when Adeline asked why they didn't have more. "She protected all of you," Adeline said. "Even after everything. She never told anyone your name. She just said, 'That chapter's closed, baby,' and changed the subject." Julian sat with that for a long moment, his eyes wet, staring out at the lawn where broken glass had spilled just hours earlier. "She protected my privacy even when it cost her everything," he said quietly. "That's the kind of person she was. That's the kind of person you clearly are too." In the weeks that followed, Julian did something nobody in Charleston high society expected. He didn't just apologize privately to Adeline. He made it public, and he made it permanent. He established the Ruth Brooks Foundation, a scholarship fund for the children of domestic workers and caretakers across South Carolina, ensuring that families like Adeline's would never have to choose between survival and their children's future the way Ruth once had to. He personally covered Adeline's tuition to finish the nursing degree she'd put on hold years earlier to help pay her mother's medical bills. He gave her a full-time position managing the foundation, work that finally let her use her mind and her heart the way she'd always wanted to, instead of scrubbing floors in a house that never saw her as a person. And Camille, to her credit, didn't disappear after that humiliating afternoon. She sat down with Adeline weeks later, alone, no cameras, no audience, and offered a real apology, one that came from somewhere honest. "I got so caught up in what this life was supposed to look like," she admitted, "that I forgot to actually be a good person inside it. Sorry. Truly." Whether the engagement survived or not almost didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that everyone involved walked away changed for the better. 6 months later, Adeline stood at the opening ceremony of the Ruth Brooks Community Center, a small building funded entirely by Julian, dedicated to supporting caregivers and their families across the state. On the wall inside hung a single framed photograph, a little boy on a swing, laughing, safe, and loved by a woman who never got the recognition she deserved while she was alive. Adeline stood beneath that photograph and thought about her mother's words. That chapter's closed, baby. Maybe it wasn't closed after all. Maybe it had just been waiting, quietly, for the right moment to open again. This story isn't just about a maid and a billionaire. It's about how easily we decide who deserves respect based on what they're wearing, what they do for a living, or what they own. Adeline never asked for recognition. She never asked for anything at all. She simply lived with quiet dignity, the same way her mother taught her, and that dignity ended up changing an entire family for the better. The truth is, you never really know who's kneeling in front of you, picking up the pieces, or what kind of strength it takes to do it without saying a word. Sometimes the people we overlook the most are the ones carrying the biggest hearts. If this story touched you the way it touched me while writing it, please hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and share this with someone who needs a reminder that kindness always matters more than status. Thank you for watching till the very end. I'll see you in the next story.